At the Penn Prison Writing Program, we consider this a tremendous part of the idea of the expression or the freedom to write. That not everyone that's in this program is incarcerated for their expression. We consider that their creative expression was already foreclosed. They didn't even get to that point because of the way that the criminal justice system is or isn't working in our country. We have the highest incarceration rate per capita of any country in the world. And so to be able to get inside to the prisons the way that we are through the creative word and through creative writing, and to offer a platform for that writing to come back out, we feel is tremendously worthy, and we hope that you do too. As one of my former students, Sean Dalpiaz, who's sitting in the room tonight from Inside, said, I got 10 years for what Rush Limbaugh got to apologize for. So just to give us an indication of the disparity in opportunity for expression that we're dealing with. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to kick it off by saying that you're in for a great treat. We have incredible readers and incredible writing, and Breon Bain is going to come up to the mic and start us off with the first poem. Thank you.
My name is Breon Bain. It's such an honor to be here today sharing words of folks who are so often put on the margin and today are front and center. Can we give one more big round of applause for the Penn Prison Program? All right. The Destitute by Brian M. Batchelor. The world's muck piles high in these corners, reeking of pungent havoc and forgotten souls. These slimy walls reverberate with muffled echoes that slip through iron bars, devoid of white wings, to carry hope to a voiceless God. The ceiling hovers like a heavy mist, dark and putrid, thick and barbed, choking any head held high. Footsteps fall on a threshing floor, gaping with endless chasms, where missteps twist the misstepped into vague memories. Here, forgivers are unforgiving, and the soother speaks with a forked tongue, lashing through grinning lips while the outside clamor of unbound hands applaud and beckon for an encore. This is where a healing touch decays and withers as the cacophonous shadows swallow warm light. No stars pave the way to an escape. No amount of strength can tear the bonds of this furious storm that confines vitality amid the waves of rotting life. No song comforts. Listen to the empty void of removed memories.
Hi, I'm Nick Flynn. An honor to be here. This is a poem by Frederick Berthoff, Chessman's Lunch. Maybe it was the floor, checked, receding, like a perspective drawing, where inconsequential games are played, which inspired the thought, the question, if you were a chess piece, what would it be? A pawn, he said, turning with a wry smile, then looking away, knowing it would be immodest to admit the more true, well-documented calling. Black Knight, guardian of the proper order of things, servant of bishops, at one time even Her Majesty, vigilant, wary, in city or swamp, layered with layers of guise and disguise, which linger still, they linger, secrets dance like mad revelers, they won't sit down. But stripped now, as we all were, of shield and sword, I poke at my salad, sip water from a plastic cup, my corner fiefdom overrun now by strangers, a compromised rook removed from the board.
I'm Martha Southgate, and I too am honored to be here. You're going to hear some really amazing work tonight. This is by Chastity West. It's called Accomplice. "You little bitch," the voice outside my door startled me. Instinctively, I snatched my towel to cover my naked body. Squinting, I walked toward the image that was peeking through the window of my cell door. "I hate you," Melissa smiled. "Look at that body. You look like a black Barbie doll." As I began to dress, the thought of Barbie stayed on my mind. Suddenly, I became very aware of my nakedness and began to dress quickly. I hadn't thought about dolls in years, but as I pulled my pajama shirt over my head, I couldn't help but think of the Barbie dolls that I owned as a child. And as always, whenever I think of dolls, I think about my cousin Cameron. It was a treat whenever Cameron jumped on his Huffy and bicycled his way from his apartment complex to our home in the next town over. My brother Paul and I loved having him over to break up the predictability of summer. Cameron was nice to me. He even let me put barrettes in his hair the last time we played beauty parlor. But I hadn't seen Cameron in almost a year, since his parents had gone through a divorce. One morning, he just showed up on our front steps with a brown paper bag tucked under his arm, his clothes neatly folded inside. He said he was bored at home, tired of seeing his mother drinking, crying, moping around in her pajamas, howling along with Billie Holiday. But Cameron had changed since then. He'd grown a whole 2 inches, and his voice sounded funny. It was pitchy and cracked when he spoke. He wore deodorant now and showed us the strands of straight black hair that had grown beneath his underarms. Cameron and Paul went up the street to play tackle football. I sat on my bedroom floor with my Barbie dolls all gussied up for afternoon tea. I laid out a spread for a tea party that would be the talk of Winbrook Drive. Tap water and checker pieces. My version of tea and cookies. As I was offering seconds on beverages, I heard the boys come bursting through the front door. Cameron was the first of the two to show up at my room. "Hey, what you doing?" he asked, picking up one of my baby dolls by her head. "They're having a party," I answered, grabbing poor Tabitha from his grip. "Tell you what," he said, "this is what we're gonna do." Cameron kicked the tea party into the corner and pulled Ken and Barbie from the wreck. "We only want the sexy ones," he said, dismissing the Cabbage Patch Kids and baby dolls. "The Barbies are sexy because they have titties and long hair." He lifted Barbie's skirt. "And plastic cunts." Cameron gave a sinister smile while lifting his eyebrows a few quick times, looking from me to Paul. Paul and I inched backwards as Cameron gave us a closer look and thumped the exposed underside of the doll. My brother and I looked at each other with twisted faces. Neither of us had ever heard Cameron use such nasty words before. The house quickly spun into a violent argument between the dolls. "Woman, didn't I tell you to have this house clean and my dinner cooked?" Wielding one of Paul's action figures, Cameron headbutted Barbie, sending her flying in my direction. "I'm not done with you." He snatched the doll by her hair and smacked her around a few times before grabbing the Hulk. "Get out of that stupid dress." He tossed me the Barbie doll. "Here, take her clothes off, and you," he tossed Paul the Ken doll. "Pull his pants down." Paul and I looked at each other, our brows gathered to the center of our foreheads. But we shrugged our shoulders and obeyed our older cousin. I knew that I shouldn't be stripping Barbie. I didn't want to do it. Something bad was happening. As soon as the dolls were disrobed, Cameron picked right up, issuing threats through clenched teeth and fighting the dolls. "Oh, you want to fight back, do you?" Ken stood in Barbie's face. "Well, I got something for people who like to fight back." Cameron slammed Barbie to the floor and wedged Ken between her plastic legs. Cameron made lewd noises and groaned disgustingly as he thrust each action figure's pelvis against Barbie. When I caught a glimpse of my brother, his 9-year-old face seemed much older. He looked back at me, his eyes wide and glossy, and then in the next instant, he looked away. As the lesson wound down, both Cameron and the fellas seemed to have grown exhausted. He handed me my crippled Barbie. I took her and said nothing. "Hey, Chas," my cousin looked at me, his eyes no longer filled with fury, his face handsome, relaxed and smiling. "Next time we play, I'll be the husband and you can be my wife, okay?" I felt my head nod in agreement. Cameron stood, pinched my cheek painfully hard, placed a sloppy kiss on my forehead, and exited the room with my brother following close behind. I realized that I was wringing something in my hand, and without looking, I felt fabric and knew that I was still holding Barbie's clothing, evidence of the crime that was just committed against her. I tossed them away from me and wiped my hand against the leg of my shorts. Cameron's grunts and moans, his bad words and dirty names remained in the room with me. Alone, I sat holding a broken Barbie. I hated her. I took her by the hair and carried her to the kitchen. And then I did something I was not supposed to do. I pressed in the knob and turned it. There's a rhythmic clicking sound before the blue flames burst into life. I held my hand close enough to the flame to feel its heat. I looked at Barbie with her wild whore hair and held it to the orange-blue fire and watched it ignite. Black smoke rose from her melting tresses. A sickening smell of burned plastic singed my nostrils. The fire grew, and suddenly I became afraid. Without thinking, I tossed Barbie into the sink and turned the faucet on. Her head was misshapen, her face distorted, her scalp a surface of tiny pinholes specked with patches of black plastic. Terrified at what I'd done, I picked her out of the sink and wrapped her neatly in newspaper before I carried her outside to the trash shed. But instead of tossing her into the receptacle, I dug a small hole under the space beneath the shed and laid Barbie to rest with all her hoarseness and shame and covered her with dirt. As I walked away, I shook my head, repulsed. What a way to treat a guest. Barbie was dead. She'd been killed in my own bedroom while I sat silently and watched. Despite the July heat, a chill scurried up the length of my spine. Shuddering, I recalled Cameron's words. "Next time we play, I'll be the husband and you can be the wife." His ominous promise that I would be next.
This is Prison Eulogies by Yvette Louiselle, who is a many-time winner in our contest. The ones who died never mattered much, except in here, where the stories never end because they're too real. Michelle, who beat her girl until she got out and got her own self killed. Stella, who laughed and laughed until that last hit her vein. Who'd have thought a pulled tooth would make Kim bleed to death, or that Pat's heart was really that bad? They don't make announcements here, but we always know. And every time, I can't kneel down for months after. My mouth won't move the way it should. It's not me. It's never me. It's always me.
Hello everyone, I'm Eric Boyd. I'll be reading my story, Examination. I would be nervous, but I think I'm going to be amused. I see a lot of you have my book, and this is an excerpted version, so you're all going to be scrambling to find out which version I'm reading. Examination. I've always hated my face. The overall effect is alright, an alright face that's probably very easily dismissed. I've kept my hair wild and my mustache thin, but none of it seems like enough. I wanted to be my own disguise. For a long time I'd wish someone would break my nose, but after a while I settled on getting eyeglasses. It seemed easier. I had the idea while I was in the county jail. I would get jail glasses. I wouldn't be me. I'd be some other person. I called my girl Lucy to let her know what I was planning. "But don't you have those reading glasses that the chapel gave you?" Lucy asked. "Yeah, the one preacher, Father Mother, he gave me a pair for helping him lift some boxes, but those broke. Father, mother, why they call him back? I don't. Everyone just does. He's a biker for Christ or something, but he's a bad mother, so he's father, mother. Don't ask me. I don't know. Lucy laughed, and it felt good to hear it. She put $50 onto my commissary funds that night. I filled out a pink sick-slip asking to see the eye doctor. Weeks passed. I should have known how long it would take to get a response. One inmate was told he'd need chemotherapy within 2 weeks or he'd be too far gone to have a shot. He was released to a hospital 7 weeks later. I just wanted glasses. I had no chance. The temptation of blowing the $50 was driving me crazy. I just wanted to spend it on potato chips and Tang. It was becoming greater each day. I was losing weight and I was going mad. I had so many unanswered questions, prayers. Glasses would help. Tang would help. Debit phone calls and letters and masturbation would help. Oh, nothing helped. A month went by and I was finally called for my appointment. A guard escorted me to the elevator, then left me alone to wait for it. The door to the elevator opened, and I walked in. There was a camera mounted in the far corner, pointed at me. I looked at it. I hit the button for floor 5, the clinic. Nothing happened. 5. Nothing. 5. Nothing. I heard noise all of a sudden, static. I noticed a squawk box next to the buttons. Where are you going? The elevator asked, a lot of noise in between each word. I said nothing. I've always made it a point not to speak to machines, especially when I don't know who's on the other end. Hear me? It asked, annoyed. I looked at the camera in the far corner and made a 5 with my hand. Okay, The static wailed until the elevator door shut completely and I started going up. There were constant, mysterious bumps and farts and clicks. The pull cable sounded very strained. Almost every week there were announcements throughout the jail about the elevators being down for repair. I reached the 5th floor and my heart hadn't exploded yet. As the door opened, I gave a thumbs up to the camera. Static started again and the door started to close. I had to squeeze out quickly to escape. I will never irritate an elevator again, I thought. The waiting area was nearly full. The room smelled like meat. A few of the inmates waiting around had terrible shakes, and they all sat talking about how they hoped to be seen by one doctor in particular. He always understood, always helped. He was the good doctor. When I sat, everyone looked at me. A very thin inmate smiled at me strangely. An officer sat next to the front desk, reading a newspaper. Fucking niggers, he said, flipping the page. Where are the comics anyway? Everyone around me stared at the officer. Hey, bro, the young inmate started to say before the officer come off. What? There a problem, you stick fuck? The officer stared at the thin inmate. Well, he continued, anybody got a problem? No one said anything, and we all sat there for a long time. There was no music and nothing to read. From my seat, I could peer into the dentist's room, but only at the dentist, hunched over, and the patient's feet hanging from the reclining chair. We all watched. One would squirm, the other would jolt back. One would make a fist, and the other would grab the arm of the chair. Then the dentist jerked, and the patient gave a muffled yelp. I saw something fall down the floor with a click, click, click as it bounced out of sight. The patient got up, shook the dentist's hand, and walked to the front desk. Motherfuckers, he said, his mouth stuffed with bloody cotton. They won't even let me keep my tooth. The receptionist nodded. You know you can't keep it. It's against the rules. What will I do with it? Escape! Don't forget to sign out, the receptionist nodded. Escape with a tooth! Sorry. What the fuck is wrong with this place? I hate this place! Yeah, we all hate it, the officer next to the desk chuckled. What floor are you going to, boy? Toe. As the patient walked out of the clinic, another one was called into the dentist's room, but the dentist shut the door, and there was nothing to do again. I started reading different medical posters on the wall. Someone got up to use the bathroom. Something banged against the door of the dentist's room. The officer at the front desk farted, and I ripped the cuticle from my pointer finger and it bled. A few people signed out. Others entered and signed in. I almost fell asleep. Then my name was called. The eye doctor is very pale, but robust. We didn't say much to each other. I liked that. He smelled like cigars. I was jealous. I faked my way through the exam, but not because my vision was perfect. The smaller letters were blurry, but the chart the eye doctor had me read was the same line, every time. E-V-C-D-T-P-O. 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 I faked my way through it. Shit. Oh, pardon my French. U? Is that you? Then C-O-T-P? Maybe Q? A little nearsighted, the doctor said. Pretty common. 3 weeks later, I received my glasses. I put them on, and as soon as I opened the box, someone walking by shouted, "Hey, it's Clark Kent!" I hadn't even seen myself yet, but already I was Superman. A perfect disguise. I smiled, but then I thought to myself, no, I don't even need eyeglasses, not really. Wearing them wouldn't change my face. I felt my nose, and it still wasn't broken. But everything was broken. When I put the glasses on, I saw how weak the prescription was. It was a joke, but it was enough, I thought. I could see differently. Things looked a little different. That night, I dreamed I was in my old apartment, in the bathroom. I was looking at my reflection in the tub, and I was naked. Lucy was also in the reflection, but when I turned around to see her, she wasn't there. I looked at the reflection again, and I was dressed. My glasses were on. Maybe it wasn't my reflection, actually. I think it was. If so, my face looked very handsome. I looked like somebody else. I left the bathroom and went into my writing room because I smelled something. The desk drawer was open, filled with half-smoked cigars. A lot of them were still smoldering, crackling, and glowing, punched out. They were very beautiful. They looked like black daisies.
I love this cause. I love this piece that they gave me to read, so I'm happy to be here. Lots of reasons that Rush Limbaugh should be in jail, don't you think? Sedition, maybe one of them. But the imprisoned should not be forgotten, so I'm glad that we're here giving voice to what they have written. This is by Julian Concepcion. It's called Beauty, and I hope that he can feel that we are reading this wherever he is. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Behold, it is I. You say I'm beautiful? You say I'm not? What is beautiful? I started working at Coney Island Freak. I was a live human target for paintballs. At first, my boss lost money because people said I was too cute to shoot. He told me, look mean, look ugly, look miserable. I let my hair grow. Whatever paint splashed on me from the paintball guns, I would not wipe off. Now I was getting shot. I was making money. My boss was making money. Why? What is beauty? Why can you shoot ugly? Why not beauty? As time went by, I started playing with my image. I knew ugly, mean, miserable was, so how you say shootable? But what else could be shot? More importantly, what else could not be shot? I dressed in comical costumes. I was a pirate. I put on wigs and masks. One day I even wore a Spider-Man costume, a few sizes too small. All these were shootable. After my second year working at Shoot the Freak, carrying a 40-pound wooden shield, a paintball helmet and mask, umpire chin guards, hockey pants, a cup, and dodging paintballs, my body became what they call sexy, hot, attractive, and any synonym for beauty. I was once again losing money. Why? Why can't they shoot beauty? I now had to wear sweaters and hooded sweatshirts to hide my body. Here come the shooters. Here come the shots. Here comes the money. They shoot funny, they shoot mean, miserable, ugly, dirty, skinny, fat, black, white, purple, green, red. Yes, I even used body painting. They don't shoot beauty. On July 4th, the temperature was 97 degrees. I had no costume, no mask, and no sweatshirts. However, I was behind the shield and helmet, jumping, dodging, running, weaving. Step right up, we have a live human target, a live moving target. Step right up and shoot the freak. The shooters kept coming. We had 8 paintball guns. When one emptied, the customer paid to shoot. It was a revolving door. A never-ending shooting spree. Step right up and shoot him. I was running, 97 degrees hot, running, shooting, running. A live human target. I ran for 1 hour, 30 minutes, still running, tired. I have paint in my eyes mixed with sweat and sand and tears. The fatigue and pain were so unbearable. I was crying and running and crying. I was dodging and weaving and crying quietly. Finally, someone remembered I was a human target. A wise guy in the crowd says, "Give the freak a little break." I was human. I put the shield down. Actually, I dropped the shield. I didn't have the strength to put it down. My body was covered in paint and muscles. The crowd grew silent. I waited a while before I took off the mask. I didn't want them to see my tears. I hear, "He's so sexy, cute, blah, 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 blah." Finally, I take off the mask. Everything is silent again. The shooters put their guns down and refuse to shoot. They say they are done. They don't even want their money back. My tip bucket fills to the max, and everyone stares while I clean paint and sand out of my eyes, while I rest and drink. No one shouts. No one shoots. When I was tired, running, crying, dodging, weaving, and ugly, everyone shoots. Now, no one shoots. You guys are ugly. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Behold, it is I.
This is Charles Norman. How should I look? How should I look or act? I asked him in answer when he said, "You don't look or act like you spent that much time in prison. 3 decades plus some change, meter running. Should my eyes be crazed, glazed, unblinking, uncaring? Should my face be lumped and creased, teeth rotted, gapped, and broken? Perhaps the nightmares I've lived have twisted me, the brawls and beatdowns broken my back. Ought my arthritic hand shake, palsy from the deeds I've done? Defend myself, offend thee, have bloodied and bled, the dead who fell unrisen to the bell? Do you wonder at my outward normalcy and doubt? Do you expect to gaze upon faded blue teardrops dripping from the corners of my sad eye, or crude tattoos of zodiacs, hearts, forgotten names of lovers cavorting, my neck encircled with blue dashes, subscripted, cut on dotted line? Or rather, you would frown at love and hate paired on the battered knuckles of each hand, endnotes to jumbled creeds and symbols snaking down my arms? How should I act? Would you prefer I meet your expectations, grasp your neck with yellow-clawed fingers, tobacco-stained tips squeezing off your airway, sour breath tinged with yeasty fumes of prison wine burning your eyes, while I rip the watch from your wrist with my free hand? Does that suit your notion of what a man becomes when he's been caged for decades with wild beasts? Can you only imagine the outward destruction of a man and not the inner? Can you not see beneath the surface to the scars of broken hopes and dreams inside my heart, the life unlived in freedom, X'd out, the loss of love and family snatched away like a rooftop in the storm, exposing the trashed memories, meager belongings soaked in the shattered house below? Of course you can't. You only see the outward man, clean-shaven, smiles, upright posture, yet unbroken, unblemished, as the wanted poster says, no scars, marks, or tattoos, except for those you cannot see, the trauma obscured beneath the sedimentary layers of life in prison. My life, in prison. Sorry to disappoint you.
This is by Aaron George. It's called Origami Heart. I can see how carefully you always fold your letters. Intricate layers of notebook paper, compact, like a note you might slip to a friend in class, hidden in cupped palms, or push through the vents of some boy's locker, too shy for anything more overt. When I pick one up at mail call, I feel it slide back and forth in the flimsy blue and red striped airmail envelope. A core of your words, and so much emptiness enclosed. Sometimes I let myself imagine that the empty space still contains your air, the envelope a lung, breathing out the same uncomplicated, milky sweetness I remember from before, when I could hold you. You would reach up and stroke my earlobe with your thumb to lull yourself to sleep. As I inhaled you, your fingers were as soft as felt, as soft as the creases of your letters, after my manifold readings. Soft, threatening severance, but still holding.
So we're going to read Mike Rothwell's Checkout Day. There's always a way out of prison, any prison, and it can be done right now, today. The authorities can't stop you. Well, they can slow you down if you're careless, but they can't really stop you if you're determined enough.
It's called checking out, or taking it to the vent, or even moving on to the next phase. Sometimes I think about the guys that were there with me when I first came into prison who are no longer here. The vast majority were done in by their own hand.
I think the all-time winner for originality would have to be Ben. He was a neighbor of mine in Folsom. What Ben did was take an ordinary electrical extension cord and cut it in two with toenail clippers. Still using the clippers, he stripped the insulation back a few inches on both ends where the wire had been cut. On the half that didn't plug into the wall, he took most of the rest of the insulation off and wrapped it around himself. He put a wet washcloth in his mouth. I always wondered if that made any difference. And plugged the other half into the wall socket, but without touching the now live end to the one he was wrapped up in, so it didn't complete the circuit.
After that, he laid down on his bunk with both exposed ends of the wire in hand and then held them together. I found out later from one of the guys that worked in the library that Ben had been studying all the books dealing with electricity he could find. He had rather ingeniously figured out how to wrap himself up in a way that didn't trip the circuit breaker as he was gradually cooked.
I thought about how many times I've been shocked for just a second or two by an electrical outlet. Maybe a dozen times, give or take. When carelessly changing a light bulb without unplugging it first or what have you, it's not a pleasant feeling, but it's sure not going to kill you right away either. Ben had to actually hold those wires together as he was slow roasted by 120 volts. That's determination.
By the time they got his remains to the infirmary, which was several minutes after they found him, his core body temperature was still over 120 degrees. At least that was as high as their thermometer went. Flesh literally flayed off his bones like the meat off a rack of well-done spare ribs. Later, a bad joke on the yard was that you could stick a fork in him. He was done.
But it was in San Quentin that I witnessed my most memorable suicide.
It was Christmas time, but the season of joy for much of the world often turned into deep depression for some of the denizens of that Gothic Bastille by the bay.
At the time, Donna's section in South Block was pretty much the end of the line for the guys who had gotten in trouble for one thing or another throughout California's other state prisons. And it also served to house the overflow for the condemned from death row. It's the inner cell block where our life's dramas play out.
There was reading, fishing, passing items via handmade lines from cell to cell, and exercise, lots of push-ups to spend one's time. But you had to be on guard, for death stalked those ancient tears. Clinical depression was what could give the reaper the key to your cell. Don't say it couldn't happen to you. Better not to tempt fate. You had to always be on guard against succumbing to conditions that can spawn a state of mind so foul it can cause a young man in the prime of life to want to leave this realm. No matter how upbeat you may feel, there's always a part of you that's miserable. If not, then there's something really wrong with you.
Make no mistake about it, prison is punishment. People suffer. People die. Months and years in that kind of environment can twist anyone's mind to some degree. I don't think it's a matter of just staying strong. I think it's more a matter of never letting your guard down. Don't let it get to you. You have to be vigilant to keep that inner demon at arm's length. It's always going to be there, so you better learn to keep it at bay. One way is to keep doing them push-ups. They help.
The cops are supposed to patrol the tiers a little more often during the Yuletide season because people do get more down than usual. But if someone's determined to check out, then there's not much they can do about it. And that's exactly what happened one dreary December night.
I noticed some activity by the 3-block cops up on the 3rd tier, evidenced by the jingling of keys and reflection of their shadows moving on the outer wall. The gunner on one of the catwalks had spotted something that caused him to raise the alarm. A sergeant and lieutenant strolled in a few minutes later and trudged up the stairs towards the 3rd tier.
Hush talk snaked its way down through the block. There was indeed a suicide on the 3rd tier. On this very real, dark, and stormy night, San Quentin claimed another victim. The prison itself, or more precisely, the conditions there, killed another human being just as sure as if under its own volition it had dropped one of its medieval bricks off a wall onto somebody's head.
The whispers started, as they always do, whenever there's a suicide. What a weak punk. And variations thereof were voiced by a few. It's like the guys who say it are trying to convince themselves it could never happen to them. But you can always hear the fear in their voices, no matter how hard they try to cover it up.
I think there's a much better way, however, to break just about anyone from ever contemplating taking the easy way out. Because from the suicides I've seen, there isn't anything easy about it, and this was perhaps the ultimate case in point.
A few minutes later, the old screws sauntered down the tier with their gruesome cargo, carrying the stretcher head first on either side, with the younger cop helping balance the rear of it. It was like they were taking a leisurely walk in the park. No hurry getting this dead body out of there at all. And I wondered if they did this on purpose. Maybe they wanted us to get a good look at him because he was completely uncovered, naked except for the skivvies he had on, along with the homemade scarf he still had wrapped around his neck. The cat I saw on the stretcher looked like he was about 19 years old, and a young 19 at that. He would have looked more in place at a high school dance that night rather than being carried out of the hole, dead in San Quentin prison.
For the first time in my life, I fully understood the term death mask. The handmade noose around his neck consisted of sloppily braided strips of sheet, and his head was bent at an impossible angle in relation to his shoulders.
Evidently, he had been hanging for a while because rigor mortis had set in. He must have changed his mind about his final life decision that night because both hands were at his neck, as though he tried to undo the fix he found himself in while the last vestige of his consciousness ebbed into eternity. His attempts to ease what must have been the ever-tightening grip on his throat had obviously failed, but had caused his fingers to get trapped between the makeshift rope and his neck. Both elbows stuck out rigidly locked in place and told the story of the losing battle that played out during the last moments of his life. His eyes were half open and mouth curled back in a horrible grimace.
Homeboy made a bad choice that night. He tried to reverse the decision he made, but unlike a lot of us who at one time or another in our lives screw up royally and deservedly or not get another chance, he didn't. He tempted fate, but fate was in no mood to be fooled with that night. The cops went out and slammed the steel door shut behind them as they made their way to the prison morgue.
Not 10 minutes later, they were back. It was as quiet in that huge cell block as it ever was. Usually there were various types of yelling at all hours around the clock, conversations between cells on different tiers, chess games hollered back and forth between cells, or just the senseless babble the nuts spew out in order to validate their existence. But not right then. There was only solemn silence. Even the crazy guys had shut up.
It's by Joseph Marner. This is Prison Poets. starts with two quotes. Everywhere, solitary prisoners begin to create the words of the new dialogue. Octavio Paz, 1949. The poet in him flounders in a morass of lies and distortions about his conquered people. He loses his identity with mankind and self-consciously struggles to regain his one-to-one relationship with human existence. By Luis Valdez, 1971. This in itself is enough to bring the charge of anomaly. Some would even argue that poetry is an antithesis of penitentiary, a truly contradictory juxtaposition. Yet, like Tupac's relentless rose that defied the oppressive density of concrete, prison poetry continues to penetrate the barriers of stone and steel. Just as the seedling had to find the crack, the weakness in its structure, in order to take root, the prison poet discovers the weakness in the island of isolation, the pen. And with the pen, the condemned prisoner's poetry takes root on the page, growing as he grows, seeking the liberation of liberations, creation. Even in the Bible, the most ancient work of poetry, does it say, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." This inspired insight is also to be found in the ancient genius of Mexican culture, specifically in the sunstone, that 25-ton work of artistic brilliance which has come to symbolize our sacred past. For it is within the sunstone that we find what Luis Valdez called the natural poetry of our people. There, at the very center of the stone, which captures the Mexican conception of the cosmos, is the sun, the heart of the galaxy, depicted as a face. Out of his mouth emanates a tecpatl, or piece of flint, manifested as his tongue, the hieroglyphic symbol of speech, the word. Sparks from the flint brought flames, flames brought fire, and fire brought light. And light in the Mexican universe was wisdom, was the word, was creation. It is not by mere chance in this cycle of poetical symbolism that in the Nahuatl language and eloquent conception of our ancient Toltec forebears, poetry was described as Cochicuaca, flower song. For poetry, like the flower itself, seeks a connection with the force of creation and the sustenance of the sun's light. So it is also true of the poet. It is here that the prisoner recaptures his one-to-one relationship with human existence through the liberating power of the word. No steel bars, no stone walls can stop the will of the word. It will always find the crack in the concrete, grow toward the light of its creator, sun, and flower. I once saw scrawled upon a solitary confinement cell wall, where one would expect to find the insanities of tribal warfare, a poem written with a security crayon by an anonymous soul. After all this time, they want us to stop. But since they can't, we will not. Torture me all you want. I will continue. The words faded. It was obvious that the prison staff had tried to scrub them off, to hide them, repress them. But the words would not go away. I laughed at the beauty of the situation, which called to mind something Jimmy Santiago Baca has written. When the wall is painted over, the words push through the paint like prisoners' hands through prison bars. I laughed some more, and then I wrote a poem. Rebellion lies behind prison walls. Its name is poetry.
A little more rebellion from Scott Woltz. I wrestle with my morning coffee, shuffling pages in a trance-like state of newspaper consciousness. Bomb blast leaves 14 dead in Mombasa. Or is it 18? 2 Israelis for sure. The Kenyans exist in a faded one-liner. West of Mecca and farther still across the Atlantic, you can hear the war drums and the dazzling voices beneath your feet, forcing the world to be free. Hatred goes down as history in a blood trail on long, horizontal pages. It didn't spring up yesterday. The evidence and moralistic intentions shine bright on the myriad headstones. Nothing changes downstream. Nothing with man changes. Behind a table of silk suits, bifocals, and liberalism with 6 seats to spare, every word will be revised, misspelled, or forgotten as required. It's an awkward thing, this preoccupation with killing. Somewhere and everywhere along the border, Paisas dream of gold, risking their essence for a better life in America, only to realize their fate is preordained to the fields, the prisons, or death in the desert heat. Al fin libertad. I read of a Texas girl huddled in a corner in the darkness of a locked closet, surrounded by food crumbs, excrement, and the overwhelming pungency of urine. She'd been there for months, or eternity, perhaps never. She was 8, 25 pounds, minus the innocence, plus or minus the scars. Meanwhile, my coffee goes cold, along with the general human condition.
This is a poem by Charles Culhane. It's called Of Cold Places. I used to keep a list of foreign prisons. Lubyanka in Moscow, Portolovia in Spain, California's Terminal Island. Exotic names of cold places. I thought, one day I'll make a poem listing all the names and conjure from their histories hard memories of humans among stone. I'm older now. The lists grow. The edges of papers curl up. They turn brown. The names still cry out, without voice, without ear to hear them. And I can't remember what it was I was supposed to do, except live nearer the fire.
I was really moved, and I read this. You guys did great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm still moved, so I just need to shift gears here a minute. And hopefully you will shift gears with me as well into a panel discussion covering broad and vast issues of literature behind the walls, the current state of the criminal justice system, and gobstoppers. Sorry, that's the rant. Well, let's say the bonus prize to whoever can work gobstopper into their conversation. Susan Rosenberg is going to moderate the panel discussion. She is a former Penn prison writing winner, a political prisoner in the country. She, many of you are probably familiar with her book, An American Radical, a political prisoner in my own country. She has said one of the things that really stands out to me, and I've been really moved by everything that she's done inside and out. She said, writing became the mechanism by which to save my own sanity. And she's here to moderate the conversation. We're going to bring up for the panel discussion Eric Boyd back up to the stage, who did such a fabulous job reading his own work and other people's work tonight. His story won this year, and he'll talk a little bit about his experience writing Inside. Breon Bain, who wrote, you have to Google this if you haven't seen the story, Walking While Black. Cover story of the Village Voice. He was, he'll tell you a little bit more about it, but it was that experience as a Harvard Law School student being wrongfully arrested that led him to the prison activism work that he does today. And also joining us is Sophia Elijah, who is an advocate, attorney, scholar, and educator, and the current executive director of the Correctional Association of New York. Please welcome our panelists.
Okay, well, good evening. First of all, I'm very, very honored to be here. I first became aware of the PEN Awards through my representation of my client, Marilyn Buck, who was a winner of the PEN Awards. And I know for Marilyn, who was serving an 80-year sentence in federal custody, the ability to write is what helped her stay connected to sanity as she did those long years. And her writing turned into just amazing work. She wrote a couple of books. One, she translated a book by Christina Perry Ross from Spanish to English, and then she wrote, well, several other books. She wrote a chapbook and then a book called Inside Out, and that last book was able to be published shortly after she passed away, 3 weeks after she was released from prison. But the ability to keep writing is what enabled her to stay connected to the outside world and know that that her voice was not silenced. And so many other people that I've represented that are incarcerated, their writing is what gives them an attachment to reality and to know that the prison industrial complex is not going to succeed in burying them alive. And that's what's so important about the PEN Awards and the opportunity to have the writing of people who are incarcerated recognized as I guess the most quintessential truth about where we are as a society.
Hello? Okay. You know, they kind of sprung this panel thing on me sort of the last minute, and I didn't know how much I had to say because, you know, I'm an idiot and I don't have that much to say. But just sitting here, I was thinking something that was sort of poignant to me. A lot of you are probably getting this concept that the prison environment is very cold and emotionless and terrible, and it's not. Something that sprang to my mind is Damien Eccles of the West Memphis 3. Are you familiar with this case? Of course, they got out recently. They were accused of some child murders that much evidence suggests they didn't. DNA evidence says they didn't do it. But after years and years of imprisonment, something like 15, 20 years, they were released, but only on a Alford plea, which is to say, we think we're innocent, but you can go ahead and think we're guilty and tell us we are. And something like that sort of just makes you realize this isn't this cold environment. It almost, at least from my perspective, because I was, you know, there, it feels so personal. It feels like you're very specifically being fucked. You know, I guess from my personal experience, I was told, okay, I have public defender, that was my first mistake, take the plea deal. I said, okay, I'll take the plea deal. What's the plea deal? They said 11 and a half months to 23 months in alternative housing. And I don't know anything about these things. And I said, well, what's alternative housing? And she actually looked at me very annoyed and said, it's housing that's alternative to what you are used to. And gave no further explanation at all. And then gave me a list of these places. They're Salvation Army, Goodwill, they're halfway houses. I didn't know that. So I called the halfway house and they said, well, you can't come here. Why would they give you this deal? I said, well, I don't know, but I'm supposed to come here. And they said, nope. I said, okay, and I called my public defender. I said, well, they're saying I can't go. She said, all right, we're going to go ahead and go see your judge and we'll work this out. You come on the day of your sentencing and we'll work it out. And I go on the day of my sentencing and this handsome deputy comes up and I say, where are we going? And he doesn't answer me. And I found out pretty quickly. And because of that bad deal, I got out early on my little 11 and a half months. And I feel bad because, you know, these people that are writing, they have these 80-year sentences, and I'm complaining about the length of a pregnancy. But it doesn't seem quite as cold as you know, might be suggested. I know all this talk of steel bars and cold brick, but it feels very personal. It feels like you're on fire the whole time. That's probably about all I really have to say about it.
I appreciate your eloquent description of the very specific treatment. I think the personal stories are important for us to bring out the sort of en masse fuckery that prisons. I'm stealing yours here, but I started going into prisons when I was 15 in like 88, 89 to perform, to do poetry, to do hip hop in upstate New York with my brothers and my cousins. You know, I had cousins on tour with Digital Underground, and when Tupac was a dancer for them, so we were like, we're gonna be the next Fushnikins, you know. So we were like going into the prisons. We got invited on the holidays. We would go sing holiday songs and bang on the table and rap, and our big joke was, oh, it's a captive audience, they're not gonna boo you, right? You know, we're gonna go in, and we're kids, and we did this every year, every holiday. We would just go, and it was just something to do. I had no idea that 10 years later, you know, I would be there, you know, and not have the option to leave. Right? And ironically, it was only that I never had any trouble with the law until I went to law school. You know, my family jokes now, I actually have the same degrees as Barack Obama +1, but his degrees got him to the White House and mine got me to the jailhouse, you know. So, and I have, you know, I'm very grateful to Sophia Elijah because she's somebody I can say actually, you know, who sent folks to get me out of jail. You know what I'm saying? So I'm very, very grateful in a real way for having, you know, knowing that folks practice what they preach and don't just get on stages and talk about it, but they be about it too, you know. So I think, you know, writing definitely for me, you know, in a creative way was a part of my connection to prisons early on. And then later on, after my experiences really did change my life. You know, I actually wrote about it, and it became a big story in the Village Voice. And 60 Minutes came and did a whole thing with Mike Wallace, and he said, "Well, how did they? You said they threw you against the wall here. How did they throw you against the wall?" And I said, "They threw us, Mike. I'm not gonna throw you so your 82-year-old ass could get a concussion and not go to jail, never come home, you know." And you know, but the moment that really, you know, led me to told me I had to really write about it in a bigger way, and I was encouraged by Professor Elijah at the time and Professor Lonnie Guinier at the time to write about my story, was when I was locked up, not even for 9 months. It was a matter of days. But in those days, I saw the contradiction between what I was learning in criminal procedure and constitutional law and what was actually happening on the streets of New York. Very, very different worlds. And so my public defender actually came to me with plastic gloves and a surgical mask on. And I'm locked up in the Bronx, and they put us on the VCBC. It's a prison boat off of Hunts Point in the Bronx. They call it the Vernon C. Bain Correctional Center, the Bain boat. My name is Breon Bain. So they put me on a slave ship named after white folks who own my ancestors. So I was like, damn, what better way to say, boy, know your place? And then my public defender, with her gloves and her mask on, came to me and said, you know, it's my professional obligation to tell you, you know, and I told her I had a, you know, Harvard Law degree and you know, I went to Columbia University and a master's from NYU, and she was like, it's my professional obligation to tell you that you may have a bipolar disorder. She said, you don't teach at NYU, you didn't graduate from Columbia, Harvard. Actually, I'm not sure anything you've told me is true. Sometimes people create alternate realities for themselves as a coping mechanism for dealing with high levels of stress. You're under a lot of stress. Oh my goodness, I wanted to jump across the, you know, but I was like, don't be the angry black man, don't be the angry black man. Wusa, wusa, namyo rengekyo, namyo rengekyo, namyo rengekyo. I was like, I'm gonna keep it together. But that experience changed my life because I was encouraged to write about it by teachers of mine who told me that I had a story worth listening to. And, you know, Professor Grenade was like, "You've got to write a hip hop opera, Breon." And so we've been doing this show, Lyrics from Lockdown, with the Correctional Association and other partners, and so that's been a part of my journey through the word and linking what's happening with this devastating mass incarceration crisis.
Well, thank you, all of you. I'm going to take the liberty of being the moderator here, and since we don't have a lot of time, I'd like to ask you, Sophia, if you could talk a little bit about what your organization does. And the reason I want to do that is that for years I have wanted PEN and the prison writing program to be connected literally to the reform work and the radical work that's happening against mass incarceration and around all the issues of prison. So I'm so happy that this is finally happening, and I can't let this opportunity go where, you know, you don't really talk about that.
I'll switch. The Correctional Association is a not-for-profit organization that was founded back in 1844 to monitor the conditions in the prisons throughout New York State. And then 2 years later, in 1846, the New York State Legislature gave us a mandate to enable us to go into the prisons, any place in the state, and any part of the prisons to report our findings out to the public. And before I go any further, I want to recognize the fact that 3 of my board members are here today: Clay Hiles, Dr. Nareda Farhan, and Breon Bain. And we are located in Harlem. Right in the heart of Harlem. And we go in and shed light on what the public isn't supposed to know about what's going on behind the walls. The fact that people are being beaten, that they are being medically neglected, they're being isolated, people with mental health problems are being put in solitary confinement, people are literally going mad in prison, and the rate of incarceration in New York State actually has declined, but the rate of the incarceration of people who are 55 years and older has increased by 64% in just the past 4 years. So, and we also have the problem of incarcerating very young people. Children between ages 13 and 18 can be prosecuted as adults here in New York State, and between 16 and 17 years old, if they are convicted, will be serving time in prison with adults. So we have major problems here in New York, and those are some of the things that the Correctional Association focuses on, and we invite all of the public to join us. You can come with us on these visits to prisons if you want to become active in trying to change what's happening here in our own state. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's great. I think going to a prison, writing a prisoner a letter, doing something about what's going on, it can really actually change somebody's life and make a complete difference in their life. So I thank you I didn't know that. I'm going to open this up for a couple of minutes for questions from people, if there are any. Yes. Could you speak up, or I can?
Yes.
Thank you.
If you have authority to visit any federal prisons that are in New York?
No, only state-run facilities. But we're working on it. We raise more money, we'll be in the federal system too. Okay.
Who are these over 55s who are being arrested? What are they being arrested for?
Well, they're being arrested at younger ages. Well, yeah, do that, okay, because I'm not practicing anymore. But they're being arrested and convicted at younger ages, but they're getting very long sentences. The kind of sentences that are being given out to people literally is burying people alive. So sentences are being given out that start looking like people's Social Security numbers, and they are being denied over and over again by the parole board. We have people here being denied by the parole board for release 8 and 9 times. There are people who are chained to hospital beds in New York State prisons who are incarcerated.
Laura.
I just wanted to sort of say something else about the correctional assessment.
Can you speak up, please.
What do you want me to say about the Correctional Association?
Formerly incarcerated and saw the system from inside, and I have to say, when I got out, I was pretty depressed about, leaving the women behind, and about how are we going to do anything about this? It's so huge, and it's so much part of our culture. Punish people, get revenge, lock them up, throw away the key. And I have to say that someone like the Correctional Association actually gives me hope that we can change things. It might not be, everyone out tomorrow who should be out. It might not be change the whole system so we don't have permanent punishment, but pieces of it can change. And that's why I would really encourage people. The writing is key. People inside, writing is absolutely key. People develop, through dealing with your own pain. You develop a new kind of consciousness. But doing something about it is possible. And it's not the Correctional Association that's just monitor.
We advocate for change.
In prison, especially women, you're told you're whiners. You're told, what, we don't get 3 meals a day. Oh, you're whining. We don't get, whatever it is you're supposed to be whining. But when the Correctional Association whines, they get action. So it's something to get involved in.
Thank you. Right. I left out the whole advocacy thing.
Yeah.
We do a lot of work. So go on our website. That's the easiest thing. Right.
What's the name?
The Correctional Association of New York.
Are there any other questions?
I have a comment.
Okay, please.
If I may. Well, one of the things, firstly, I'd like to praise the organization for bringing this together. It was a very wonderful event, very inspiring. I'm just here from California. I'm from Oakland. And the problem I see, is that some of the people that are in prison are some of the finest that humanity has to offer. The wrong damn people are in prison, you see? There's no way Richard B. Cheney should be walking around. There's no way tomorrow a man's going to have a kill list. And, it's a pachyderm in this room that we're not addressing. I think we all should take a look in the mirror and see what kind of society we want. And the prison is a reflection of that. And the people who are imprisoning people, I think we should reverse the equation. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, nobody's clapping, but I hear you. I hear you. Right. Well, I would like to just say one thing about Penn. I'm getting signs that say we have to bring this to a close, but the Penn Prison Writing Project is an amazing project, and there are a number of people from the Prison Writing Committee who are here, many people who have been involved in this project for many years, who have really fought over the years to make prison writing a recognized genre of writing that is to be judged and evaluated no differently than other forms of writing. And as a writer, that has really been important about what this committee has fought for and done. Could the people who are on the committee just raise your hands so that we could see who you are? This is all done with voluntary labor for solidarity around prisons. So I also want to say that Penn has helped to build a prison movement made up of prisoners by allowing prisoners' voices to be heard. And that is really, really important for the development of more broad-based change, to include the voices of the people who are actually behind the walls. So I want to thank all of you for coming. I think this is amazing, and I'm sorry we don't have more time. But people will stand around, and please come up and ask us or other people on the committee questions. And then, Penn, thank you so much.